morning, everybody. I toast to you and all you do. Having some weird lighting going on with the camera. Hopefully it fixes itself, or maybe it's just from where I'm sitting. Anyways, I toast to you. Oh, that's kind of funny, ironically, with this being the last day of the darkness, having dark issues with the camera. Well, I guess it is what it is. Anyways, hopefully when I play it back, it's better. So, today I want to talk about Yule, because tomorrow is the winter solstice. Not everybody calls it Yule. There are a lot of other holidays at this time, depending on where you are. Some people would have celebrated it on the full moon yesterday, and the winter solstice. So, this marks the celestial change in the season. The sun will start its migration back towards the north in the sky, and so we will see the days get longer. And this would have been a grand time for our ancestors. I mean, it's a grand time now. I think that although a lot of it has been lost into the superficial Christmas holiday with Santa and, gifts and all of that and the hallmarkness of it, however, the energy is still there. This is a blossoming energy. This is a time when we begin again. So if we go back before the Gregorian calendar, back, before all of those Roman emperors changed the silly calendar into what we know now, we would have marked this as the new year. The Yule would have been, the winter solstice would have been the first day of the new year. And this would have been that time of celebration, of new beginnings, of the sun returning, of divine birth. You see throughout many cultures around the world that this is a time when the gods were born. And we celebrated the mothers. There are several goddess holidays around this time where, you would have had a feast for the matron of your family and celebrated the goddess and divine birth and all of those things that we kind of already know about. That we still continue to celebrate, even through Christianity. It's one of those things. I love studying lots of different religions because in every religion you see the same, principles, the same things come up again and again and again. Divine birth happened all around the world at this time. There are many gods that are born on the winter solstice, and that carried into even Christianity when this is celebrated as the birth of Jesus. Now, if you read the Bible and you do all this, it's not really, but because this is where the energy fits in, this is when it's celebrated because it feels natural to us. And we've been doing this since we were hunters and gatherers. This was a time when even if you look at Stonehenge, this would have been one of the times throughout the year when the entire community, Paleolithic, I'm talking way back, would have all traveled to Stonehenge and been there and celebrated this moment. The same kind of thing would have happened in not Chichen Itza, well, maybe, but in Machu Picchu. It would have been on the other side, so it would have been, they're celebrating right now the summer solstice, but at the winter solstice in June there, they have the same thing. They had grand pilgrimages to... Hello, airplane. They had grand pilgrimages to the temples of the sun to welcome back the sun's return and the return of the god. And those are on opposite sides of the earth. You go all the way to the oldest sun monument that you can find on the earth right now, and it's in Australia. And they also would have celebrated the return of the sun. Again, it would have been in June, because that's when their winter is. But, same principle. They marked their calendar by this. This is when the sun transitions back to its days of strength, and we welcome that energy back. And we honor that energy. And we recognize that without the warmth of the sun and the blending of that duality, the earth would be cold. And we would not have the bounty and the beauty and the growth and the love and all of the things that we have, because it takes both of those energies flowing together. And this is one of those times where, the goddess's energy gives way to the god's energy, and we have this divine cycle continue. And the goddess will go into regression, and she will return into earth, and we'll have the snowy, cold winter, and she will blossom back again in the spring. And the cycle will continue as it always has. Now, in ancient times, one of the reasons they would have had such grand celebrations is because they didn't realize that the cycle is going to continue no matter what. And I think now, with the reality that we know through science and all of those things, we don't go out to pray, to call to the sun, because we don't think the sun is going to return. One of the traditional things to do is tonight you would light a candle, and all night long you would call for the sun's return. And you would light a bonfire, and you would stay up all night, and you would do the thing, and it would be what you did. Because if you didn't, then the sun wouldn't come back. It's like the rooster. I don't remember what movie we were watching, and the kids and I were watching a movie, and he's like, well, I have to wake the sun, crow. And he's teaching the other roosters how to crow. And then one morning he wakes up and he doesn't have a voice, and the sun comes up anyways. And he's like, my life is over. But we've already had that realization as a people. We know that if that's not why we're doing it. Instead, we put the candle out and we honor this energy to, one, honor our ancestors and the energy that they created and thrived on and produced, and it continues on today, but also to honor the energy of the god and honor the energy of the sun. Maybe you follow a pantheon that doesn't have a god, and that's fine. Honor this universal energy of the sun's return. This is a grand moment and shift in energy. It took a long time to realize that shift, but one of the ways that really helped me see that was to track the sun's movement through the sky and see how it enters my house or how it hits my garden throughout the year, because it's different. In the wintertime, I can't have my kitchen windows open during the day or in the morning, because it beams in and it cooks the food in my pantry. That's not conducive for fruits and vegetables in my pantry. So I have to make sure that curtain is closed in the morning. But in the summertime, when the sun is way over here and rising on this side, it doesn't do it as bad. And it's just an interesting, but to see the sun shift in the sky from north to south, north to south, is pretty entertaining. And helps to connect with that energy and really see. So now it is all the way in the south for us, and that's why our days are so short and why it's summer in Australia. But now we'll see that sun return, and it'll come back this way towards the north. Now, for us who are closer to the equator and more in the centralized aspect of the earth, we don't have such a dramatic change. But people who are in Finland and Iceland, up there closer to the belt, or Australia, even further down, Antarctica, stuff like that, you really, really see this, because the sun will only be up for a very short period of time. And then in the summertime, the sun will be up all day long, and because that's where the sun is. And so you really see this to a dramatic effect. And so the traditions of more northern and southern cultures really highlight that, because this was a really big deal for them. In Mexico, where you're pretty close to the equator, yes, they celebrated the equinoxes and the solstices. However, the equinox for them was a higher potent energy, just because that's when they felt that balance in the earth. So just kind of depending on where you are on the earth does kind of signify the change in how you celebrate the holiday. But everybody coming back around to this winter solstice, this is that time of rebirth. So as we come into this day, think about the things that you're trying to rebirth in yourself, those new starts, and what it is that you want to blossom in this next year. If you followed along in the introspective journey, one of the things we talked about is changing your values from extrinsic to intrinsic, and really deciding, is this who I want to be for me? And as we come into this awakening with the solstice, we have that opportunity to say, okay, this is who I want to blossom into this year, and this is who I want to be, and these are the things that I'm going to nurture, and I'm going to step into that direction. And so allow that energy to propagate in you and blossom. And so by the time we hit, Imbolc or midwinter, or we hit the equinox, as that energy grows, you can feel those things grow inside you and that change happen. And then you realize by summertime, hey, I've made these changes and I am closer to my ideal person, and I can make these lifestyle things stay and be this person that I want to be. It's not about instant gratification. It will take time, but this is when that energy is born, like a brand new baby. Like, who is that baby going to be? Who is this new person that you want to be? And we have this opportunity every year. So every time the cycle changes, every time the wheel turns, we have this opportunity to be reborn, to grow. And so take that and really honor that by honoring yourself and making some changes and doing the things that you need to do in order to be closer to your ideal self. So, before we wrap up, just want to talk a little bit about the attributes of this holiday. And we celebrate some animals that are really associated with this time of year are going to be the goat. You see that in a lot of Norse traditions. In Italy, it was a donkey. It just kind of depends on where you are. If you go further north, it was a reindeer. Some places it's a horse. But we have some kind of equine, I want to say, type animal, but a working animal that helps the gods, that helps you, and we honor these animals, and they provide us with gifts of wealth. So one of the things that would have happened at this holiday, at this time of year, many, 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 many years, back when we were hunters and gatherers and nomadic herders, that's what it is. This is when you would have had to thin your herd. Okay, so we've gotten through part of the harsh time. Now we have to get through the really harsh time. Which one of these animals is going to be sacrificed in order to provide us with the wealth and the bounty that not only that we need to provide for our family and our community, but also to make sure that the herd survives, so that there's enough food for all of the animals left. And so this would have been like an honor sacrifice. Like you would have picked out the animals who were not doing so well, or who, or even maybe like the big fat cow who is eating too much. You're like, yeah, you're going to go because it's time. It would have been cold enough in most places where you could store the meat for a longer period of time. So when we think about the reality of the situation, and then we think about the myth. So when we sacrifice these animals and they give us this bounty, they are providing this great gift for us. And then we think about the mythology of, Odin being carried in by his grand horses and, or on his goat, depending on the mythology, or all of the other, the Holly King comes, and there's a lot of different little things like that. There's a witch that comes, and like I said, there's a donkey, there's a couple other ones, but they're providing their bounty. And so we have this story that shares of this myth of an animal who comes and provides and helps, and it provides the services to say, here's what I have. In reality, this was a time of sacrifice. So we continue to honor this energy now by sharing these stories, by living on this mythology, but keep in mind that that's where it comes from, is that our ancestors would have had to make this sacrifice. Like, these are animals that they bonded with, that they live with. I mean, they sleep with. This is your family, and now we must sacrifice you because we all have to survive. And so the gift that you give us is honored in that we honor you in these stories. So you see that throughout all of the holidays and through a lot of different mythology. And sometimes it's hard to make the connection because you're like, why would it be like that? But this is why. So on that one, there. Some mythical creatures are going to be your fairies and elves. This is, again, a time when we welcome in these spiritual creatures because it's cold outside. And we want them to have somewhere warm to stay throughout the winter. So gnomes, elves, pixies, whatever may be your fancy, depending on where you live in the world, this changes, because there are different spirits, just like there are different cultures, there are different little spiritual creatures all over the world, and so they are dependent on where you are. And sorry, in my brain I just see the migration of fairies and pixies and nymphs and all of those things, and they have moved around with people and themselves and all of that. And so it's not like you can only find one kind of fairy in one area. They're just as eclectic as we are. There are just as many different kinds. And however, I have not found the one that does my dishes yet. I have found some that are super helpful. They hang out at the house. But so now is a time to do different things to welcome in these spiritual creatures. If you've let them in your garden, you can let them in your home. And I know there are a lot of people who are really wary about this, and they're like, oh, the elves are dangerous and the fairies are dangerous. Well, they made Pan into the devil, and Pan is one of the most playful, energetic, fun-loving gods that there is, and they made him into the devil. Take modern norms of spiritual energy as a grain of salt, like take it with a grain of salt or whatever it may be, because they're so colored by Christianity and monotheism and this world that we live in that sometimes they're not true. A lot of times they're not true. And so don't get caught up in thinking, oh, they're really bad and they're dangerous and they're going to do these bad things. Yeah, humans for a long time have taken advantage of fairies, and many fairies now are... See, there's a dog barking. I got to wrap this up. Many fairies... You can easily make them mad, but this is about respect and honor and building that relationship. So if you're building that relationship with the fairies, this is a great time to like make gingerbread houses or leave out offerings, bring in your fairy altar, those kind of things. And yeah. Oh, the Yule Log. I did want to just briefly mention about the Yule Log or a Yule candle. Part of this is about cycles and transitions, and you take something from last year and you bring it into this year. So you would take last year's Yule log to light this year's, last year's Yule candle to light this year's, and you just keep that piece of it and you light this next year. And then that helps to, because we're always bringing a piece back with us from the old into the new, and it's not like all done, washed away. There is pieces that come with, and so we always take a piece of that to bring into the new. And honoring our ancestors and honoring who we are, and coming into this with the ideal of being a better you, being who it is that you want to be. So now that the neighbor dog is barking, I'm gonna go. Hopefully it's not so dark that you guys can't see me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and I will see you guys all in the magical